Hi, I wonder if you've ever been out stargazing. If you've ever tried to see the brilliance of the stars, it's no good doing it in a city. And the brighter the city, like in Asia in particular, when it's even at night, all the lights are on, all the neon lights and all the street lights. When you're trying to do it, when the lights are on, it's very hard to see how brilliantly and how beautifully the stars shine. But you go out into the countryside, and the darker the night sky, the prettier and the brighter the stars shine. Now we're going to look at the fourth statement about what we believe, and it has to do with the fall of humanity or sin. And the reason why we're doing this, and the reason why we need to really get a hold of how dark sin it really is, how deep it goes, how wide and pervasive sin is in our lives and our society. And the reason we're doing that is because that's like the night sky. The darker we see it, the more brilliantly we will see our salvation in Jesus shine. And so you take away the sin, you take away the fall, you take away how serious this problem is, then the solution doesn't become much of a gospel at all. All right, there's three things I want to really lead you to that historically the church has believed about sin, but our culture is going to more and more so push against it. The first one is called original sin. Now, what's original sin? Original sin is talking about how humanity under Adam, our first man, actually, that what he did affected all of us. It affects us in a couple of ways. One is that because of Adam's sin, we are born into a world where we are bent towards sin. We're like, I've used this illustration before, like shopping trolleys that just can't keep going straight. You've ever had one of those? Or if you've ever gone lawn bowling, you know, the balls are actually biased towards one side. It'll always bend towards one side. That's what Adam's sin does for us. But also, to another extent, and this is particularly hard for us to really grasp and understand in our very individualistic culture, is that somehow Adam's sin makes us guilty, all guilty before God, as humanity, as a collective. Now you get that idea in Romans chapter 5. You can look it up later, but it says that in Adam, all die. All right? Because of Adam's sin, we are all condemned. Because of Adam's sin, we are all somehow in Adam guilty. Now, I know that's going to be hard to accept because, again, we think that, we're responsible for everything we do. And it doesn't take away from the fact that God does hold each person responsible for what we do, in that we will all be judged for our own sins, right? Not just Adam's sins. But it's also because in our individualistic culture, we don't want to think that we are connected upwards in history towards those who've come before us. But you go to any other culture, even Asian cultures, collectivist cultures, and we'll know, and actually from experience, you'll know that you are your parents' child much more than you care to admit. The older I get, the more I realize I'm just becoming like my dad, okay? And he's a great man. All right, Adam was the best of us. He was the best of humanity, and his headship means that what he did impacts us. It's called original sin. The second thing that you need to know is what's called total depravity. Total depravity is really a picture of how far and how deep sin goes. Now, don't get the doctrine of total depravity. Don't misunderstand it. It does not mean that we are all as bad as we could possibly be all the time. It does not mean that sinful people can't do good. Or it doesn't mean that if you're not a Christian or you haven't been saved, that somehow you're not able to have tenderness and kindness and all of those things that are part of our God-given image, right? We are still made in God's image. God's image is marred, it's broken, but it's not totally taken away. That's not what total depravity takes away. What total depravity means is that there is no part of humanity, no part of us that is not affected by sin. You got that? All right, put it in the positive. It means that every single part of us is affected by sin. Every single faculty, right? Nothing escapes. So Ephesians 4:18 says that, 17 to 19. Ephesians 4:17 to 19 says that it affects our thinking. Our thinking is futile. Our understanding, we're separated from the life of God. The hearts are hardened, all right? And verse 19, having lost all sensitivity, we've given ourselves over to sensuality to indulge in every kind of impurity. You get the picture there? Every faculty of humanity is affected by sin, from our intellect to our emotions to our wills, every part. All right? And that's why our statement says, left to ourselves, we are completely guilty before God. Like there's nothing we can do to save ourselves. Absolutely, because sin affects us so deeply. And just like improving education or getting therapy to fix our mental health or emotional health, all of that may be helpful, but it won't get rid of sin, because sin goes right deep into every part of our faculties. That's total depravity. And the third and last thing I want you to realize is, and this is really important, is that sin makes us deserving of God's anger, right? It actually brings guilt before a judge who will judge us. And left to ourselves, as our statement says, we will come under his wrath and his just condemnation. You'll look up passages that talk all about that, especially in Romans, all right? The Bible says in Ephesians 2 that we are dead in our transgressions, and we are objects of God's wrath, or children of wrath. Now, again, this is not a popular thing to believe. It's very unpopular, in fact. Because a lot of times, and this happens all the time now, you're going to read statements about sin and the fall, and all it's going to talk about is that sin is sort of like a brokenness, which is true. We are broken, all right? But it won't actually say what the Bible says, that sin makes us guilty before a judge and we will face eternal condemnation in hell. And it's a personal thing. It's a personal affront against a God who's our creator. It's not just that we are broken and we need fixing. We are rebels and condemned people, and we need to be pardoned. There's such a massive difference, isn't there? And so never think of sin as anything short of the Bible's picture, that it brings us guilt and brings us deserving of God's eternal condemnation and judgment. Okay, so you got those three things: original sin, all right, total depravity, and the fact that we are facing God's anger and wrath because of it. Now, the study hopefully will actually take you in directions where you're going to think about how to apply it in terms of your head, your heart, and your hands. I'll just leave it here, and I hope that some of these beginning bits about sin will help you orientate yourselves as you open the Bible, and also check out what I have to say. See if this is what the Bible actually says about us and about sin. All right, go well. See you later. Bye.